and welcome to Indus News. Live from Islamabad, I'm Naila Shuja, and these are the headlines. Pakistanis and Kashmiris around the world are observing Black Day today on the second anniversary of India's illegal revocation of occupied Kashmir special status. Protest rallies are being taken on both sides of the line of control and across Pakistan against the Modi government's unlawful action. In their messages, Pakistan's President Dr. Arif Alvi and Prime Minister Imran Khan called on the international community to hold India accountable for its actions. The Taliban have refuted U.S. envoy Zalmay Khalilzad's assertions that they are seeking a lion's share of power in a future government. A Taliban spokesperson, Zabiullah Mujahid, termed Khalilzad's statement as his personal view. Meanwhile, the group claimed to have captured the Kang district in southwestern Nimroz province. Iran has condemned the accusations that it harms the security of naval traffic in the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman. In a letter to the International Maritime Organization, Tehran's ambassador to Britain said these accusations are politically motivated. Earlier, British Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab said the United Kingdom and United States are united in condemning Iran's attack on the Israeli tanker. The Arab coalition says it has intercepted an explosive Latin drone launched by the Houthi rebels. The coalition said that the drone was aimed at the southern Saudi city of Khamis Mushtaq. It said operational measures are being taken to foil attempts to target the civilian areas. The number of global coronavirus infections has hit another grim milestone of 200 million, with more than 4.2 million deaths. Brazil's caseload has topped 20 million, with its death toll over 559,000. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, 60 more people have died from COVID-19 and 5,600 tested positive overnight. And in the Tokyo Olympics, Germany's Florian Wellbrock has won the gold medal in the men's 10-kilometer marathon swimming competition. Meanwhile, Nevin Harrison of the United States won the gold in the women's canoe single 200 meters event. China leads the medal standings with 32 golds, followed by the United States with 26 and host Japan on 21. For more news and details, stay tuned. We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back. Pakistanis and Kashmiris around the world are observing Black Day today on the second anniversary of India's illegal revocation of the occupied Kashmir special status. Protest rallies, seminars, and conferences are being held on both sides of the line of control and across the world against New Delhi's unlawful action. Talking to media at a rally in Islamabad, President Arif Alvi said Pakistan will not hold any talks with India until it reassents its illegal steps of the 5th August 2019. In his message, Prime Minister Imran Khan called on the international community to hold India accountable for its actions. Khan reaffirmed Pakistan's commitment to the Kashmir cause until it reaches a just solution in light of the UN Charter. In a statement, Chief of the Army Staff General Qamar Javed Bajwa said peace is not possible until the dispute is solved as per aspiration of the Kashmiris. Earlier, a 1-minute silence was observed across the country while traffic was also halted for a minute. On the second anniversary of India's unilateral and illegal annexation of occupied Jammu and Kashmir, Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi led a rally in Islamabad to express solidarity with the people of Kashmir. More in this report.
Foreign Secretary Suhail Mahmood, Foreign Office spokesperson Hafiz Chaudhry, Information Minister Fawad Chaudhry, Senator Shibli Faraz, and people from all walks of life participated in the rally. The marchers highlighted the atrocities committed by Indian forces in the occupied valley. Speaking to Indus News, Qureshi said India's actions of 5th August 2019 are violative of the Security Council resolutions.
On the 5th of August, India took certain unilateral measures. They were illegal. They were violative of the Security Council resolutions. They are trying to re-engineer the demographic balance over there, which Kashmiris are very disturbed about, and they reject that. They have used all kind of oppression to break their resolve. They have failed. On all counts, they failed.
Protesters called on the international community to hold New Delhi accountable for the gross human rights violations committed in the occupied Himalayan region.
We are here to protest the atrocities that are committed by the Modi government in occupied Kashmir. Every Pakistani child, man and woman stand with the people of Kashmir and extend their support and solidarity to them.
They called on the global community to fulfill their commitment and grant the people of Kashmir the right to self-determination. Manahil Ahmed, Indus News, Islamabad.
Today marks 370 days of the Kashmiris living in an open prison since the Indian government stripped the occupied valley of its autonomous status. More in this report by our correspondent Manahil Ahmed.
On August 5, 2019, the Indian government revoked Article 35A and 370 in occupied Kashmir. The article had allowed the state a certain amount of autonomy, its own constitution, and a separate flag. It could also bar Indians from outside the state from purchasing property or settling there. India not only snatched all these rights 2 years ago, but also imposed a ruthless curfew and a communications blackout. Thousands of Kashmiris have been languishing in Indian jails since then. Kashmiri activist Malik said India is trying to change the demography of the disputed Himalayan region.
We became refugees and all our economic, socio-political rights were transferred to the Indians. So basically, India's agenda is to transform this occupational force into not just an Indian colony, but into a mini India. And to do that, they are at very fast pace, changing the demography. They have, in the past 2 years, they have given almost 40 lakh Indians domicile certificates, which is shocking because in the next year or so, this area would become a majority Indian area, an Indian region. And then if they conduct the plebiscite, then naturally Kashmiris will be marginalized, minimized, and they will be a minority. And our entire struggle of right to self-determination will go in vain.
Speaking to Indus News, Foreign Office spokesperson Zahid Hafiz Chaudhry said Pakistan will never accept Indian illegal actions in Kashmir.
The fourth assumption that India made, and again where it went wrong, was that somehow Pakistan will accept India's actions. Pakistan has refused to. And since 5th August 2019, we have launched a diplomatic offensive. We've approached international media. We have approached the global parliament. We have approached the United Nations. We've approached the United Nations human rights machinery. We've engaged the civil society. And in Pakistan also, we see that the government of Pakistan, all state institutions, all political parties, civil societies, and Pakistanis as a whole, they are all on one page. They are all united on the issue of Jammu and Kashmir, and we believe that only resolution of the Jammu and Kashmir dispute lies in full implementation of the United Nations Security Council resolutions.
India's continuing crimes against the Kashmiri people are a solemn reminder to the international community of its collective responsibility to hold India accountable. Manahil Ahmed, Indus News, Islamabad.
For more on this, we are joined by Lieutenant General retired named Khalid Lodhi, a defense analyst speaking to us from Islamabad. Mr. Lodhi, thank you so much for speaking to Indus News. Now, India's extrajudicial killings of Kashmiri civilians has worsened after the August 5th annexation of the valley. What could be the consequences if this continues and the world keeps its current passive attitude towards this nuclear flashpoint between India and Pakistan?
Thank you very much. I think the consequences are already quite clear because they have lost the hearts and minds of all Kashmiris. You know, in the past, there used to be a group of Kashmiris who would support the Indian government or even the Bharatiya Janata Party. But now it's no more. So this is one big consequence of their actions, which are brutal. We need to understand two lessons of history very clearly. One, that you cannot forcibly annex people of any area against their will. One. And secondly, if you lose their hearts and minds, that they are not with you, then one day or the other, they will get their freedom. So these two things are obvious. The only thing is a matter of time. Yes, today is a day where we should review what all Modi government has been doing in the last 2 years and how effective have been our responses. So I think what they have been doing is that very slowly but surely, according to a certain strategy, they are annexing the remaining areas, also carrying out certain political gimmicks. For example, making certain areas as a part of the union and other a normal state, abrogating 370, 335A, etc. And they are assimilating the portion of illegally occupied Kashmir, which is with them. We have been quite successful as far as the diplomatic front is concerned, but I think politically, even lawfare point of view and militarily, we have not been very successful as far as the responses are concerned. So we need to review our entire response and make sure that we give a befitting response to all Indian actions so that they come to their senses. And instead of waiting for the international community, which of course we should keep trying, but it is our problem and we have to resolve it ourselves, and we may not rely on the international community forever. Yeah.
Mr. Lodhi, now New Delhi has been amassing more and more troops in and around Kashmir over the past 2 years. What would this deployment, be successful in coercing the Kashmiris into subjugation?
Naturally, you see, if you have one person with a gun and uniform for every 7 to 8 civilians, so that is the concentration of force more than anywhere in the world. I mean, nowhere in the world you will find such a strong force suppressing the will of the people of any area. So they're actually, the fallout is going to be negative. I mean, it will be counterproductive. Instead of the people getting suppressed for all times to come, they will spring up whenever they get an opportunity. Yes, today you are suppressing them. Today you're injuring them. Today you are martyring them. But this cannot go forever. And even a Kashmiri child born today carries that hatred and bitterness because of their actions. The only thing is Kashmiris, they want help. They want assistance. And of course, the international community must come to their help. But we must remember as Pakistanis, it is our basic duty to provide them all sort of help which is required for them to get their freedom and to give them their inalienable right of deciding whether they want to join Pakistan or India. India knows the consequences of any such plebiscite, and that is why they are not, agreeing to that. But United Nations Security Council, along with our friends, China, maybe other countries, we must try to resolve this issue so that these atrocities on our brothers and sisters, those can be terminated.
Mr. Lodhi, now the regional countries have recently shown that they can play a bigger role in helping solve the crisis in Afghanistan. Why has this approach and attitude been missing when it comes to Kashmir?
There's a very, very clear reason as far as that is concerned. In Afghanistan, both sides were aggressive and they were belligerent. And in this case, I think India is much more aggressive than Pakistan. And Pakistan is our policy is a bit of defensive in nature. Unless we also acquire the aggressive nature, you will see yourself that the entire world will come, and they would then see that these two nuclear powers, there's a potential of clash between them. So that is the reason. And secondly, on one side it was America, on the other side it was China and Russia and Pakistan and the neighboring countries. So there was a sort of balance. In case of Kashmir, we have not been able to create that counterbalance to India. So we have to work more in the diplomatic field, but also in the military field, also in the political field.
Lieutenant General retired named Khalid Lodhi, thank you so much for speaking to Indus News. For more on this, we're also joined by Air Marshal retired Masood Akhtar speaking to us from Islamabad. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, Mr. Akhtar, how can India be held accountable for decades of oppression, martyring over 400 Kashmiri civilians since the 5th of August 2019 and crushing curfews, destroying the valley's economy and people's livelihood?
Valid question, but of course the answer will be longish. I'll try to make it very brief. India has made the mistake of their lifetime. At the strategic chessboard, they have brought all options open on Kashmir issue. In fact, right now, they wanted to make it a bilateral issue, by annulling the 35A and 370, they have internationalized it or made it multilateral. So the net result, there is pressure from America, there is pressure from Saudi Arabia, pressure from UAE, and that is why they ended up talking to Pakistan in the back channel dialogue. All that Pakistan needs to do is do a few things. Number one, have a very, very clear policy on Pakistan, on Kashmir, a maximalist policy of plebiscite and minimalist, where we can ensure rights for all Kashmiris across the border. Minimalist is that they should be able to, around the 4 points, somewhere that demilitarized, give autonomy, joint management, open the borders, and of course, annul 35A and 370. Simultaneously make Kashmir a model for the entire world. That is our part of Kashmir. But most important, our foreign policy exterior maneuver must improve. But even more important, for God's sake, our Kashmir Committee chairman, who has always been appointed for political expediency, should be done actually to make a lot of noise, because our cause is just, it is fair, it is there on the UN Security Council agenda, despite the fact they may be able to, India may have been able to rub our nose on FATF and some other minor issues, but here is a big opportunity that we must cash on by making a lot of noise abroad, everywhere, by exploiting the Kashmiri diaspora across the world who are keen to do this and who have the capability.
Mr. Akhtar, now the occupied valley is under military siege for the last 2 years. Is there a military solution to the Kashmir crisis?
No, we have tried that a number of times in the past. We look at 65, look at Kargil, we could not succeed. Today, India cannot apply its full military power against Pakistan for one very simple reason. The powers that be will not let them do that. They tried a number of times in the backdrop of the Parliament attack, then Bombay attacks, and America did not let them do that. So the total war military power application for, let's say, 20 days is out of question. They tried the surgical strike in the backdrop of false flag operations, the Balakot strike, and in case of the Balakot strike, they tried their last option of air power, and we re-established political and military deterrence in broad daylight versus their attack at night. So they are not going to try this. And please understand, if they want to fight a war in Kashmir, which is a small area on ground and a small air area above the ground, they take in five of their best corps, because they cannot employ anything more than that because there is not enough space. They bring in 5 squadrons. We can do exactly the same thing. And we can stand our ground. Air power has stood its ground. Ground military power, army has stood its ground. They could not do anything. So military solution is out of sight. But diplomatic solution, now that there is pressure from the powers that be, I think we have a chance, provided we get our house in order, number one. Number two, we have the right policy. 3, we have the correct policies at home, put our house in order. I think we can make ground.
Mr. Akhtar, now the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has stopped after the annexation of the occupied valley. He has been vigorously seeking to change the demography and is now seeking to delimitation in occupied Jammu and Kashmir, despite the opposition from all political parties in the disputed region. What could be the possible consequences if Modi manages to redraw electoral lines in the occupied territory?
Number one, he will not be able to do that. Please remember, Air Vice Marshal Kapil Kak, who is a navigator from the Indian Air Force, retired, and he's a Pandit from the Valley. He says the 370 annulment and 35A reading down, it is akin to someone jumping out of a multi-storied window, and as he or she is falling, every story, he says, so far so good. So what he has done has not truly worked. The two political parties and others that he really bitterly criticized as dynastic and corrupt, they won the District Development Council elections hands down against the BJP. In fact, Muslim Conference made some headway in Jammu also. So he was constrained to call them for a dialogue because he thinks that what he was wanting to achieve with this political project, he's not been able to achieve. He's not been able to create a King's Party. There is insurgency or militancy that is continuing unabated. There is a spike in military recruitment, militancy recruitment, and of course, the economic investment that he thought will come has not come at all. So he called these people that have join us for delimitation, join us for election, then he can think of restoring statehood. He's got a bargaining chip over there because statehood number 1, 370 number 2, 35A number 3, and union, that is getting Ladakh and Jammu and Kashmir back into one. So he has got these four bargaining chips to bargain on. But he has lost the political project that he set forth because people, especially in the valley, are not ready to listen. The day he lifts the curfew, he's fearing a strong backlash, and that is when all the problem will start.
Air Marshal Retired Masood Akhtar, thank you so much for speaking to Indus News. We also have Hussain Malik with us, the chairperson of the Pakistan Peace and Culture Organization and wife of Kashmir leader Yasin Malik. Mushal, thank you so much for speaking to us. Now, Mushal, do you believe the international community realizes the gravity of its responsibility towards the Kashmir crisis?
We have a very, very strong case internationally, but maybe the people in charge, the international community, are weak lawyers or they're afraid of India because it's a big economy or it's a big market. But for how long will they save the interests of India? How long will they not, keep their eyes wide shut? So I think it's in the interest of the region's peace and security and also the global peace that this nuclear flashpoint issue must be settled once and for all before, God forbid, we have another second nuclear exchange between India and Pakistan. Because if peaceful settlement, if an action against India is not the solution, then what is? Is it war? Is it a full-scale war? Because that is the only option left. And I'm afraid the world can't afford that.
Mushal, how is the Kashmir issue affecting regional stability? Is it just Kashmir, or do you see a wider pattern of India's destabilizing actions in the region?
The countries within the region also, right now, how China, which is part of the permanent 5 countries, after 5th of August, China is directly a party to this entire conflict, and India has invited China into this. So it has many parties which are directly involved and affected and have high constraints involved with this matter of this Akhand Bharat narrative, and the neighboring countries also. Bangladesh, Nepal, Tatapani, including that in their map, and then NRC, the Amendment Act, Citizen Amendment Acts, all these things are affecting the internal and regional dynamics along with the Kashmir dispute. So it needs international intervention on the basis of the abrogation and also violating international law.
Hussain Malik, thank you so much for speaking to Indus News. Now moving on, Pakistan's top diplomat in Turkey says allowing Kashmiris to decide their future is a litmus test for Indian democracy. Ambassador Mohammad Cyrus Sajid Ghazi urged the international community to act against India's violations in the occupied valley. In an interview, Ghazi said that the Indian troops deprive and brutalize the Kashmiris. He said the occupying forces are oppressing any means of registering a protest. Ghazi said that on the 5th of August 2019, India clearly conveyed to the world that it does not care about the Kashmiris.
August 5th, 2019 marks a very black day in the history of Jammu and Kashmir because India has now clearly told the world that it does not care about the wishes of the Kashmiris, it does not care about the United Nations Security Council resolutions. All it cares is to use all means available to it, force, fraud, as well as these pseudo-constitutional efforts to deprive the Kashmiris of their right of self-determination.
It's now time for a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. The Taliban have refuted U.S. envoy Zalmay Khalilzad's assertions that they are seeking a lion's share of power in a future government. In an interview, Taliban spokesperson Zabiullah Mujahid termed Khalilzad's statement as his personal view. He said that the group is not after a monopoly of power or eyeing a key share. Mujahid noted that the Taliban want an accord that can observe the Islamic aspirations of the people. He said there will definitely be a complete Islamic government and all sides will have to accept this. The spokesperson added that all Afghans will be given a share in that government. Meanwhile, the group claimed to have captured the Kang district in southwestern Nimroz province. Earlier, the United States condemned the Taliban's attack on Afghan defense minister, which left 8 civilians dead. The United Nations says that it is deeply concerned about the safety and protection of tens of thousands of people in Afghanistan's Lashkar city. The remarks come as the fighting between the Taliban and Afghan troops has intensified around the besieged city. According to a UN spokesperson, civilian casualties have also increased in Helmand and Kandahar due to fierce clashes. Stephanie Dujarric said that nearly 360,000 people have been displaced by the conflict since the start of this year. He added that 5 million people have been displaced since 2012. Dujarric cautioned that tens of thousands of people can still be trapped in conflict-ridden areas of the country. Iran has condemned the accusations that it harms the security of the naval traffic in the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman. In a letter to the International Maritime Organization, Iran's ambassador to the United Kingdom termed the allegations politically motivated. Tensions are simmering in the region after 2 crew members were killed in a drone attack on an Israeli-managed ship in the Gulf of Oman. Yesterday, a Panama-flagged vessel was also briefly hijacked in the same waters. In a letter to the UN Security Council, Tehran said artificial maritime incidents are being created in the region. Earlier, British Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab said the United Kingdom and the United States are united in condemning Iran's attack on the Israeli tanker. While the U.S. State Department spokesperson said Washington believes Iranians hijacked a tanker in the Gulf of Oman. But Ned Price said Washington is not in a position to confirm. The Arab coalition says it has intercepted an explosive-laden drone launched by the Houthi rebels. The coalition said that the drone was aimed at the southern Saudi city of Hamas Mushtaq. It said that operation measures are being taken to foil the attempts to target civilian areas. Meanwhile, the Gulf Cooperation Council said that the UN team must be allowed to inspect an oil tanker that is stranded off Yemen's Red Sea. It called on the international community to press Houthis to allow the examination of safer oil tanker. It said that the action is necessary to avoid an imminent environmental and economic catastrophe. The number of global coronavirus infections has hit another grim milestone of 200 million, with more than 4.2 million deaths. Brazil's caseload has topped 20 million, with its death toll over 559,000. More in this report. Countries across Asia are grappling with their worst coronavirus outbreaks of the pandemic, that is spurred by the highly contagious Delta variant and low vaccine rates. The World Health Organization says low-income countries have only been able to administer 1.5 doses for every 100 people due to lack of supply, while the high-income countries administered around 50 doses for every 100 people in May, and that number has since doubled. As the gap between vaccinations in wealthy and poor countries widens, the health body is calling for a halt on vaccine boosters until at least the end of September. However, the United States has rebuffed the call from the organization to impose booster shot moratorium, saying that it presents a false choice.
We also, in this country, have enough supply to ensure that every American has access to a vaccine. We will have enough supply to ensure if the FDA decides that boosters are recommended for a portion of the population, to provide those as well. We believe we can do both, and we don't need to make that choice.
A European Commission has approved a contract with the United States firm Novavax for the purchase of up to 200 million of its potential vaccine. Britain says it will offer all 16 and 17-year-olds their first dose of the Pfizer vaccine. Meanwhile, while fully vaccinated travelers returning to England from France will no longer have to quarantine. Over in Australia, as Sydney reported its worst day amid Delta strain devastation, authorities say the country faces vaccine supply glitches.
The challenge is the Delta strain. That is the one different component. That the Delta strain is like nothing we've seen, and that's why the vaccine is our key tool. Fortunately, we do have that tool now available in Australia, but we are constrained with some types of supply, obviously, which we've been talking about. But getting jabs into arms will massively help us reduce those case numbers.
Japan has warned that infections are rising at an unprecedented pace. New cases have hit a record high in Tokyo, overshadowing the Olympics. Meanwhile, a new study shows that COVID-19 may not affect the lungs of vaccinated patients as much as that of unvaccinated ones. In Pakistan, coronavirus has claimed 60 more lives, taking the death toll to 23,635. The health ministry said more than 5,600 people tested positive for the virus overnight. Pakistan's COVID-19 positivity rate has crossed 9% for the first time in nearly 3 months. The ministry said there are over 77,000 active cases, while more than 4,000 are in critical condition. It said the infections tally has crossed 1,053,000. In the United States, at least 10 people have been killed after a van crashed in southern Texas. Police say most of them were illegal immigrants. Authorities said that the van veered off a highway in El Seno and struck a metal pole. They said that the driver and 9 passengers were killed in the impact, while the remaining 20 were injured. Officials said that the van did not have any restraints and was crammed with twice the number of passengers than at its capacity. Meanwhile, Texas authorities are working with the Mexican consulate to identify the victims. Mexico has sued several gun makers in a federal U.S. court, accusing them of reckless business practices. The lawsuit is one of the boldest steps ever taken by Mexico to pressure the American arms industry. It accuses the gun makers of supplying what it called a torrent of illegal arms to Mexican drug cartels. The lawsuit said over 500,000 guns are trafficked annually into Mexico, with over 68% made by firms in question. It noted some weapons are engraved with the image of a Mexican revolutionary and are coverted by drug cartels. Talking to reporters, Mexican officials said that the lawsuit seeks to estimate $10 billion in damages.
First, that the companies in the lawsuit provide compensation to Mexico for the damages caused by their negligent practices. The amount in this case will be determined by the judge, with the development and implementation of reasonable standards for the monitoring of and disciplinary measures of distributors.
Lebanese police have scuffled with angry protesters demanding accountability for the Beirut blast. Last year, the explosion at the port had killed at least 214 people and injured thousands. Thousands of Lebanese had gathered to mark the first anniversary of the catastrophic explosion. A senior Christian cleric demanded to know why explosive chemicals had been stored in the capital. The violence broke out as stone lobbying protesters tried to storm the parliament building. The police responded by firing tear gas and water cannons and beating demonstrators with batons. The Red Cross said 8 people were injured during the clashes. Former U.S. President Donald Trump has challenged an order to turn his tax returns over to a House of Representatives committee. The order was issued by the Department of Justice last week. In a filing, Trump's lawyer said that the committee lacks a legitimate basis for seeking his federal tax returns. They said the Justice Department erred when it backed the committee's request. Trump was the first president in 40 years to not release his tax returns and aimed to keep them secret in the activities of his company. Critics had also accused Trump of using the Justice Department for his personal and political interests during his tenure. Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan says that his country is battling the worst wildfires in its history. In an interview, Erdogan warned that forest fires are a global threat just like the COVID-19 pandemic. Erdogan added that 187 forest fires have erupted in Turkey over the past 8 days, with 15 yet to be put out. 8 people have died so far, while thousands of locals and tourists were forced to flee their homes and hotels. The blaze also spread to a power station in the country's southwest after reducing swaths of coastal forests into ashes. Meanwhile, wildfires have also caused havoc in the Greek island of Evia, destroying 150 houses. Authorities have ordered villages in the western Peloponnese to be evacuated. Pop star Rihanna is now worth a whopping $1.7 billion, making her the richest woman musician in the world. According to Forbes, an estimated $1.4 billion of her wealth comes from her value of the Fenty beauty cosmetics company. The 33-year-old singer and businesswoman also holds the share of the Savage X Fenty company, worth an estimated $270 million. The rest of her earnings comes from her career as a chart-topping musician and actress. The singer of Umbrella and Love the Way You Lie ranks second behind Oprah as the richest female entertainer, as reported by the magazine. In the Tokyo Olympics, Germany and the United States, along with Australia, are among others to clinch gold medals on the 13th day of the Games. China leads the medal standings with 32 golds, followed by the United States with 26 and hosts Japan on 21. This report has more on the Games.
Day 13 of the Games is scheduled to feature a total of 27 gold medal events. Germany's Florian Wellbrock won the gold in the men's 10-kilometer marathon swimming competition, while Nevin Harrison of the U.S. secured the gold in the women's canoe single 200 meters event. American Ryan Krauser broke his own Olympic record to take the gold in the men's shot put. Meanwhile, Australia's Keegan Palmer claimed the last skateboarding gold of the Games, edging competitors from Brazil and the US. Australian pair of Jean Van Der and Thomas Green bagged the gold medal in the men's kayak double 1,000 meters event. New Zealand's Lisa Carrington won the gold in the women's kayak single 500 meters competition. Portugal's first gold of the Games came with Pedro Picardo winning the men's triple jump. Hungary's Sandor Totka won the gold medal in the men's kayak single 200 meters. Elsewhere, Hansley Perkman of Jamaica won the men's 110 meters hurdles gold, while in the men's hockey, India secured the bronze medal by beating Germany 5-4 in a thrilling contest.
It's now time to take a look at the weather updates from around the world. For the latest news updates, you can follow us on our social media at indus.news.